couldn't find a ruler. I've got a pointer.
Okay, good.
Tony found the pointer.
Perfect.
Might be better than nothing. Okay. We ready to go?
Yep.
Okay. Hi guys, some of you don't know me very well. I'm Stewart Barton, been around for a while in Wairarapa, and so pretty familiar with wave. And I better get my notes in order. That's picture I took to Stewart Grae one day when I knew it was probably rubbish weather in Wellington, and so I sent him a photo of what it was like in Wairarapa from my doorstep at home. So as you can see, it's quite a classical wave, that, and rotor, and I'll refer a little bit more to the rotor than the lenticular shortly, because back here it shows sort of more what I'm going to be talking about. Probably a bit more than that one up there. That's sort of looking towards Papua there, that rotor. And you often see that, don't you, here? Okay, so just I'll start. So a lot of you will remember Anya, that flew with us from Germany. She was a student at Kiranui College, and within a year she was a qualified glider pilot. She was so keen. But Anya asked me one day, how do I get into the wave? So I made a few suggestions, and then Anya got into the wave the next flight. And it was great watching her from the ground below, actually taking on board what I had suggested. And I learnt probably those techniques from my mentor away back, Peter Lyons, in Hawke's Bay. And when the young fellow there was sort of sitting out at Kirurana camp and talking about exactly what we're probably talking about now. So hopefully this talk will help you understand how to have success, especially from our site. And I think that's what we're talking about mostly today. Obviously a powerful tow plane is the easiest way to get into wave. However, mostly we don't have aero tow at our site, and if we did, we'd be having a lot of successful wave flights from this site, a lot more than we do. But however, that's the way it is. So the best thing we can do is use our skills to the best we can. So I think the first thing you've got to be is current, and that means confidently doing tight turns. That doesn't just apply to wave, that applies to thermaling as well. I remember when I was at first sort of competition flights, and I probably didn't do a lot of flying in between my competitions ever, and single-seaters, a lot of instructing, but not enough single-seater stuff. And I remember my father saying, I could tell when you were starting to go well because you were starting to turn tighter. So just remember that. Try and practice turning tighter and confidently as you progress. Because even I, after all these years of flying, and I bet Tony's the same, and Tony over there and Gray, etc. If you haven't flown for a while, it takes you a little bit to get into the old putting the wing down and circling tighter again and doing a good job of it. I think first of all I just want to show you in simple terms, and it is very simple, of how the wave works, because some of you here don't know, a lot of you do know. So here we have the wind coming in from the west. It compresses, it comes over the hill, gets compressed a bit, so often there's rain on the Wellington side, dare I say, and as it precipitates and rises and compresses a bit. Cap clouds are a typical one when you look along the mountains there, can't see them today, but that's a typical indicator of whether the wave's going to be there or not when you start seeing this like a waterfall of cloud coming over. then you get the bounce and the primary rotor, secondary, etc. The ideal waves when wind speed is increasing with altitude, the wind layers sort of build on top of each other much better. Up high will be the lenticular, and that could be much bigger than I'm showing there. So that's sort of basically, there's often compression of the air. If you know, when you pump up a bike tyre, the air gets hot. Same thing happens on the eastern side of the mountains here. Compresses against the other air and it warms up. I think that has a bit of an influence on these rotor clouds. Remember, a rotor cloud is a cumulus, type of cumulus cloud. So, you know, you've got to think of it a little bit like that. I'll get to that diagram soon, I think. Just by the way, wave will be pretty much parallel to the source that's generating it, not the wind. So the source that's generating it is obviously, in our case, the mountains. So if you get mountains change shape, like more at Omarama, the wave will change its path along that too. So how do we use this information low down? You may be in a thermal. Often we are over here in a thermal. Sometimes we're lucky enough to strike it off the winch and pretty much work it from the winch, but more often than not we're dropped back to the ridge. It corresponds with the wave bouncing on the ridge and we're away. Obviously when it bounces down on the ridge it's not very good, and I bet a lot of you have already found that out with very short flights. So you need to treat that, so often the thermals will be wave induced too, like in the summertime you know, the wave will help boost those thermals. The other one is getting, as I said before, getting the ridge in sync with the wave out there. Often we go down the ridge a bit, don't we, and we seem to get it more regularly down by the pivot there, and just move forward from the ridge from there. So I'll explain a bit more of that in a minute. So we're going to look for signs of rotor. You see a bit of rotor. Can we change? Oh, let's see my pictures are going out of phase here.
Yeah.
Hang on.
What do you do?
I must have
Go backwards. Yeah, no, this way. So that's your first one. So
first one. Yeah, that's right.
You want the first one?
Yeah, so you can see from this picture there's an obvious little wisp of wave rotor up here. Interestingly, this is over Martinborough, by the way, down here. That could be primary there, I can't really tell. But anyway, we look for little wisps of where we low down. For example, I remember in a contest once I was with a mate in a two-seater, and we were down Martinborough, we got late, the thermal had run out. So I said to Ken, we'll go back onto the ridge behind Martinborough there. So that worked, but all the time I was looking out for signs of wave forming. And so I was looking out for these little bits. I was back here, of course, on the ridge. And yes, finally things lined up and we were able to push back. In the meantime, we'd radioed up my wife and his wife from Marston to say, you better come down because it looks like we'll be landing out. You just come down, we can sit on the ridge as long as we like, and because we were going to land at Ruakaka-Petuna, that was before there was a heap of vineyards there. And anyway, they got down, so we just hit the wave as they turned up over the hill at Wantwood there. And they said, do you want the good news or bad news? We've struck wave and we'll get back to Marston, but you'll have to turn around and go home empty. So we arrived and were at the bar before they got home. So it was, but the whole time I was looking out for that and just quietly pushing forward, feeling and then eventually we got the waving away. That's sort of what I'm getting at. And awful diagrams, I'm sorry, but I'm not that good at that. So a rotor cloud is obviously clouds appears on the upwind side, on the downwind side the cloud dissipates as the air descends. So what we're often looking at when we're low down here, and that's what I was talking to Anya about, was we get off the winch, and if we find just a scrap of lift, just treat it like a thermal as hard as you can. And you might be under this one, it'll drift back, so then just push forward back here, and then just push forward. By then you're probably a little bit higher, and again it'll drift back, push forward, you're probably down here somewhere to be honest. Push forward, and then eventually you'll be able to push forward onto this and into the wave here. So I think that's the best thing I can advise about. Just treat it like a thermal, like a real tight thermal. Work it as hard as you can, Bruno.
Wind obviously comes from the left of the cloud, right?
The wind, yeah.
Yeah,
Sorry,
obviously. Yeah, that's okay.
Yeah, that one. So
Just
yeah, I
stating
should
the
have
obvious.
mentioned that. You're right, Bruno. Thank you. So yeah, you're pushing into wind that way and just working, like hell, and then you'll be drifting a little bit backwards, etc. as you're doing it. Make sure I don't miss anything here. So yeah, so I probably got a little ahead of myself there. So I said, how do we use all this information we've got? I've lost the track because of the photograph. So basically, that technique there is more aligned with this type of rotor you can see here. See, that's quite a large cumulacy looking rotor, which you often do see over top of this here. So those will be the ones we're looking at when we're using the technique I just advised over there. This one's more like I was striking down the valley here. So you're just looking for little wisps, and keep looking for them because they're often forming again in front. So you've got to get upwind. Probably one of the worst things you can do, and it's caught me out quite a few times, is thinking you might, this is low down, travel downwind and catch the secondary or tertiary wave probably. That's caught me out in Wairarapa once, and I ended up landing out. Thinking I could get back onto the secondary or tertiary, I can't remember, probably tertiary wave, third wave. And it often doesn't work, especially low down. So yeah, the further you're forward, the more likely you are to get into the wave. So you're most likely in that technique I explained over the far side. So you're thermaling up under here, working it like hard, push forward, and just each time you'll get a bit higher, pushing forward till you get up into the, see those little wisps there, those of you can see that? Keep an eye out for those forming all the time. So that'll be forming in front there and dissipate. It's quite interesting, showing people who don't know about rotor and wave, they're not blinding people. Just explaining, because obviously it's called standing wave, so it looks like the clouds are one place the whole time, but as most of us know, the clouds forming in front and dissipating as it descends again. So as I say, just keep repeating that technique. So yeah, so higher up you'll start contacting the wave. Another technique is, and it may even apply once you've contacted wave, it often happens out here, where you're in a very localised wave, and the best technique I find with that is doing S-turns. Look for a ground feature on the ground, and because you'll be surprised how you drift away from it. So just keep an eye on a ground feature, and you'll probably find you go back to that ground feature and that's where it is again, and just keep working that till you get up into the more powerful stuff up in here. So you're sort of working S turns through here somewhere, and then eventually you'll probably contact the wave. Well, you more likely will contact the wave, because once you're onto that little bit there, it usually keeps working in that little localised area. So then just, yeah, and once you're up in the wave, those of you who've experienced it, you know when you've hit it, because it all of a sudden goes lovely and smooth, and you're away. So that's a technique I often use, and out here, sort of this side of the, which side? The Waihi River, probably the other side, but you'll find little localised spots that work better than other spots because of the layout of the mountains in front of us. So all I can say now is that just keep an eye out. I think quite a dangerous time in your wave flying is actually when you're climbing up in front of the rotor. So keep eyes 360 degrees around your head, and because you don't want to be pushed back into this. That could be a disaster. You could lose your disorientation, and yeah, I've been on an airfield when a glider's wings have been pulled off and a fatal accident waiting for the, yeah, that wasn't a very nice day, that one. And anyway, so, you know, that's, I can't emphasise enough, but making sure you don't get drifted back into this. I might just push a few photographs along, I don't know if they're, yeah, you can see there some more rotaries here. That's probably more the primary one there. So we're probably mostly back on this type of rotor that goes back to Papawai. Again, this is from my place at Martinborough, and that's the primary. Obviously, if you had a tow plane, you'd be towing under that. It gets really rough on the way in, as a lot of you know. But I feel sorry for the tow pilots. It's just when it goes smooth, we release them. They have to come back through again. You might notice one of our tow pilots that mastered and wasn't very keen in the piping cut to hit the wave. Mark.
Stuart, you just point out the actual leading edge of the rotor there, the little fingers pointing forward. I don't think everybody realises quite what the leading edge is.
Yeah, that's rotor there, but that's probably the best example in there. Is that right, Mark?
Yeah, you've got to get to that though.
Yeah,
You're
you've got to
looking
get
at stuff.
to that. You might get onto the secondary, probably a bit big gap in there than you think. Yeah, sometimes wave, you know, it's quite hard to find, and you actually some of our waves, the frequency is quite close, and a bit hard to exactly know where to go, and you're often quite close to the trailing edge of the other one, I find. Just remember too that frequency can change, so that's what I was saying. I probably should get onto that again about safety. This frequency could change. It could start doing this here, and that's where this rotor will move forward, and it could catch you out. So for goodness sake, as soon as you see a little wisp in front of you or out the side of your eyes, get forward pronto, because that'll be where the lift is, and also you don't want to get pulled back into this. I'll just give tiny, I've nearly finished my part. So, yeah, you can see some spongy rotors here. I wasn't very high at this stage, probably about 7,000 feet, but just over Featherston there. So that's more of a spongy one, as you can see, just in front of the rotor here. And yeah, just gives you a bit of an idea what to look out for. See a little bit there starting to form. You know, that could start moving out here, or a bit could start moving out here, won't be that bit. And, yeah. don't get
That's
caught
Lake
in-
Wairarapa, obviously, right?
Yeah,
Yeah.
Lake Wairarapa.
Looking at the sea, looking
Yes.
south.
Yeah.
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 So Stewart,
Sea Lake Ferry.
Yeah.
Stewart, if you were heading south from there, which line would you take?
Oh, yeah, probably not a good photograph of it, but it's down through here, that's right.
But if you're taking the secondary, which way would you go?
Well, I'd want to be a bit higher than that before I went over.
Fine then.
So I'd have to climb up here and jump over the back, I guess. I can't really see the secondary on that. I think that's all part of the primary. Sometimes it gets a bit scungy, but over Featherstone's often a very good place for a lift, but you're quite close to the airspace boundary there, so just be aware of that, from 9.5 to 7.5. I just will allude briefly to this one. This was a day when Grae and I went up into, separately gliders, he went further than I did, up into Hawke's Bay in about 2017 or something. It was a beautiful day. The views to the west, you could just see Mount Taranaki, Ruapehu, Lake Taupo, etc. It was incredibly clear to the west that day. But what I want to allude to is this is the fairly wispy looking lenticular. We're at 19,000 feet there. And you can get very complacent. The air's dead smooth. And I had to be very careful that I wasn't getting it sucked to that. Obviously I could have got higher if I'd had a better oxygen system and got clearance from, more clearance from ATC, but it just gives you an idea that that's the a high level lenticular, very faint one, and just be really aware. That lift, by the way, was going way out here. I could go way, way forward and I was still going up like a rocket. So,
Wind is coming from the right on this one, right?
from the right,
Yeah,
yeah.
yeah,
I
of
must
course.
be turning around just to have a bit of a look. Yeah. So that's looking south.
Yeah.
Over.
Must
Yeah.
be.
But so that's just something, and Grae may allude, will you, Grae, to a bit of safety stuff around that as well. So I think, you know, we'll do questions at the end, won't we?
Yeah. Good.
So, any just relevant stuff at the moment, or shall we wait till afterwards?
I think we'll do a Q&A at the end.
All right. So I think does that help a wee bit, people? Yeah, I can't emphasise enough about getting your turning techniques really aggressive, and you will find it rough, but you just got to work hell out of it, and just keep pushing forward. Just push forward, because the likelihood of you finding another little cell quite quickly is quite high under that, especially under this one. And the other point I was going to make is that if the air's dry, you probably have to go much further forward in the rotor than you think to get the lift. Much more forward of the rotor than you would normally think. Sometimes those of you who've done it, you know, often you're almost ridge soaring rotors, but as you go up, but I've struck it up, especially in Hawke's Bay where the air was extremely dry in summertime, and had to go way, way forward of the rotor before I got the lift, and then it was really good.
Is that just because of the lack of moisture?
Must be, yeah, don't ask me too much technical stuff. Yeah, I believe so, yeah.
Yeah, you're not getting the visible signs.
But, so, yeah, I think too, I'm not sure, somebody knows more about it than I do, the technicality, but as this compresses, I guess the air's getting warmer, and that's probably creating little thermal cells under here too, trying to get up into the colder air, so that's probably another reason we're getting these bits running through there. Okay, great.
Tool boxes, yeah.
Using technology sorted out.
Yeah, I don't know if he wants any of those photos.